No. So guys, it is 5 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District monthly meeting. It's Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. And I'd like to do introduction of board members, and I will call them as I see on my screen, please. But before I do that, whoever is on the iPhone, if they would please change it so that they are identified. Thank you. Lorraine?
Hi, Lorraine Morse, representing the Addison Central School District.
Kim Farnan from New Haven, the community at large member for the Mount Abraham School District.
Steve Rooney, representing the Mount Abe School District from Starksboro.
Judd?
Judd Markowski from Town of Bridport, web member.
Christina?
Christina Macklin from North Harrisburg. I'm the Addison Northwest School District rep.
Nick Colston Shoreham, representing ACSD.
Okay, and then administrators, Dana?
Dana Peterson, Superintendent Director, Patricia Hannaford Regional Technical School District.
Austin?
Austin Haynes, Business Manager, Hannaford Career Center.
And we have many guests on right now. So may I take a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Moved, Lorraine.
Second.
It's been moved by Lorraine and seconded by Judd to accept the agenda as written. Is there any discussion on it?
Yes. Was there an email about somebody extra being added to the agenda? Did that get taken care of?
I believe that you're referring to would be under visitor comments.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of the agenda as written, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Do we have comment? Hi, Missy.
Hello.
Do we have any comments from our visitors tonight? Aaron Townsend?
Hi, thank you. Hope you all can hear me okay. Doing my computer audio. So I want to say a good evening, board and community members. Last spring, the staff at HCC appealed to you to conduct a thorough review of the school's climate and morale. We'd just like the opportunity to follow up on what actions the board has taken to address the issues that were raised. We're not aware of any plan, any survey, or visible action that have been taken up to this point. There continue to be persistent systemic problems at our school. The inability of the leadership to attract and retain qualified faculty and staff at the Career Center is of dire concern. The situation at the Career Center is untenable. Our ultimate concern is that students in programming will suffer. This is our concern. We're educators, not policymakers. We ask for competent and compassionate leadership at every level so we can effectively serve our students and provide the standard of education that the students, parents, and community have come to expect. We feel that time is wasting. Our school needs to take immediate and decisive action to set its house straight. Thank you.
As is always, public comment is the time for a conversation back and forth with the board, but just want to know that we hear you. Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Yes, Suzanne.
Oh, sorry, Jake. I didn't see your hand go up.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
My name is Jake Burnham. I am a former teacher, former student of the Career Center, former teacher of the Career Center. I resigned effective this last July. I want to start by first saying that the Career Center means a tremendous amount to me as a person and my family. Were it not for the Career Center, I would not be in the seat that I am sitting in right now. A lot of my family wouldn't have accomplished the things that they were able to accomplish. So the Career Center means a tremendous amount to me at a very, very deep personal level. There are very few things that I love, and this school is one of them. With that said, it brings me great pain it brought me great pain to be in the position that I was in last spring, where after submitting our feedback, administrative feedback in March, I believe, you all received this report. I submitted 2+ pages worth of feedback regarding Dana and his professional ability to lead the school. And I did not, I put my name on that feedback. It was an anonymous survey and I put my name on it. I did not hear one piece of follow-up from Dana or frankly you, Suzanne, as the board chair. And that told me everything I needed to know about Dana and his hollow feeling of being a growth mindset individual. He claimed to want the feedback, and yet when provided it, he did nothing.
Jake,
Yes.
the board is a quasi judiciary board, and if there's a complaint about an employee, it needs to be done in executive session. And so I have to caution you that you are kind of wading into that territory right now. So if there's a way that you can say your comments without names, that would be much better for the board.
Sure. The superintendent didn't reply to any of the comments that I submitted last spring. Many of you have, in my 11 years at the Career Center, many of you grew, I hope, grew comfortable and familiar with my attending the board meetings. I was as intimately involved with the interior direction and leadership of the school as any over my 11 years. To the point that when the superintendent was brought on 5 years ago, went through great personal sacrifices over my own summer to help bring that person up to speed with the challenges of the school internally and externally. And to have that relationship erode really over punitive actions was really disappointing and culminating in last spring's evaluations of admin. There was no follow-up. And I asked the board how you would feel about faculty if student surveys were submitted and students had some of the feelings about faculty that I expressed about the superintendent. Would you expect the teachers to follow up with those students, or would you be okay with nothing happening? And you know, I also want to direct this criticism to the board chair, Suzanne. I'm sorry, but you also saw this. May I use your name? You also saw this feedback with my name, and there was no follow-up. I don't understand really how that is acceptable on any level, from the perspective of the community, from the perspective of the fellow board members, past board members. I don't get it. It really does not feel great to have to be in this position and share this with you in this format. But you really, the superintendent and the board chair have put me in this position to share these things in this format. I did have to move on. It was for no other reason than the superintendent, period. I said as much in my resignation letter to the assistant director, and I would hope that the assistant director would corroborate that in executive session when personal names could be used. But my single reason for resigning from the Career Center after 11 hard, wonderful, passionate years is due to the current superintendent.
I thank you for your comment, and just to let you know that there are things that occur in executive session that are not for public comment. And so there are things that may be in place that you are unaware of, and that since they are done in an executive session, we can't discuss. So just to let you know that. But thank you, Jake.
Well, the silence was deafening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Patrice?
Yes, I guess
Can
he
you-
has a comment.
Yes, I was going to ask you if you could help him, please.
Okay. I'm going to stand if that's just a little bit easier, because I'm used to when I teach.
Take your mask
Walk around off. Oh, you want my mask off? Okay. Hello, my name is Hugh McLaughlin. I'm a retired math teacher who my wife and I moved to Middlebury from Lexington, Massachusetts in July 2018. I have been substitute teaching at the Hannaford Career Center since the fall of 2018, because when we were here purchasing a house, we got a tour of the Career Center and the Makery, and they recruited me even before I had bought the house. So Patrice knows my numbers and calls it occasionally. Well, a little bit more than occasionally lately, but we'll leave it at that. The Hannaford Career Center has been blessed with many excellent teachers. It's been a pleasure to serve here. However, recent and looming departures are likely to leave some major gaps in popular programs. Besides Jake, Doug Atwood, who teaches industrial design and fabrication, will be retiring in June 2022. He retired last year as a bus driver. And finally, I do not expect Hayden Thompson to return as an automotive teacher in the fall of 2022. If pressed, I will share that information as to why I arrived at that, but I don't think in a public space it's appropriate. I have not talked to Hayden. It is just secondary information to which Mr. Townsend is probably aware. These are big holes to fill, and I don't want to have any more to fill. I want to tell you how much I am impressed by Esley Jones, the new automotive teacher. He is juggling lots of balls in the air, and I will be substituting him for him tomorrow, because I think he's truly one of the excellent people, and we want to attract more of them. And I am speaking about recruiting and retaining teaching staff, and would like to suggest 3 policy changes the board should consider at a future meeting. I believe these policy changes will help retain staff and increase learning of Hannaford students. The policy changes are cease pursuing the IB career program certification. I talked to several of Doug Atwood's students this week who certainly could qualify for that credential. They go to NUHS and they don't want it. I believe such a credential will not significantly help HCC students get into very competitive programs or universities. However, the existing HCC programs, such as FFA, Leadership, National Technical Honor Society, and the Resume, Cover Letter, Application, and Network Assistance that students receive from HCC faculty are cheaper and more effective at showing how special many of our students are. And I think that's why the students that I talked with earlier this week in Doug's class will be in very good engineering courses, and they benefited from Jake's interaction with Jake last year, and significantly beyond whatever Jake learned. I would just put it that way. Second, I I think we need to start requiring of interviews for second year and senior students. Why? Because they need to practice using their tools in interviewing. Second, we need to set subhead. We need to set expectations as what's expected of senior students in programs. Second year auto has been a challenge ever since I was here and can lead to burnout. And so we've already gone through Hayden, who has moved away from that. Paul came in and it ultimately was too much for him. And now we've got Esley, who was an HCC graduate from Ferrisburg, went to University of Northern Ohio, where we send our best students, has worked at County Tire and others. So if I were to design an ideal candidate, it would be him. And I will not explain why he is here, other than he loves students and wants to work with young people rather than adults. So it is my understanding that the ART program, the ART program, required interviews in the past, but that this requirement was dropped for reasons of equity. I would be happy to speak to this policy at a later date and believe that the board should also hear from student input on the impact of the current policy. Finally, I believe that there should be an increase in teaching staff at the auto and diesel programs to at least 3 full-time teachers with industry experience or ASE certifications, and have a full-time administrator on North Campus who has street cred. When I taught in an alternative high school, my principal said, "Hugh, in math, you use textbook problems. You have no street cred with these students from Chelsea who grew up on the streets. You need to change your problems, get to them, be able to talk to them," and it was one of the best trainings I had received. In closing, it appears that the auto and diesel programs are trying to achieve 2 goals: presenting high school dropouts and preparing a subset of students for full-time jobs in the repair and maintenance of transportation vehicles. It is my professional opinion that these 2 programs, each of which has 1 teacher bearing significant parts of the load, and they have significant experience in the subject area, it is such that the programs are either over-enrolled or understaffed. If we're going to keep as many kids as we have this fall in those 2 programs, and particularly next year in the afternoon, we have some seniors in auto 1, so that they will not all be going to auto 2, but there will be a crowd there. I'm happy to talk more about my recommendations, but I leave you with 1 comment. In the NEASC evaluation of the fall, well, 2 comments. In the fall of 2019, it specifically noted that ASE exams are offered but not required at HCC. Having survived 2 NEASC reviews, 1 a renewal and 1 a reaccreditation at Lawrence High School, the high schools I taught at the time treated such comments as suggestions for future considerations. So I recommend that the board look at requiring them, because it's a part of the curriculum, but a number of students basically do not think it's worth their time to give it more than casual effort. Finally, I like the Hannaford Career Center's new mission statement. It starts with the phrase, "We provide students with rigorous hands-on and classroom instruction." For me, rigorous implies assessment of skills and understanding of key concepts. This should lead to more opportunities and higher paying careers after graduation for every student. I believe it even applies to those receiving special education services, because they have very good work habits and will make very good employees. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration. And I continue to work with, enjoy my association with Career Center faculty.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or I don't see any hands raised. So I thank you all for your comments, and the board hears everything that people say, and sometimes we do have to do things in executive session, which we can't announce to the world. But just know that we do hear you, and we appreciate all of you, and we thank you all for your comments. Moving on, Dana, do we have any correspondence?
I have one item that I will read. And this is from Kelly Mills. She says, the Middlebury FFA chapter received a check in the amount of $2,200 from the Aubuchon Foundation of the Community Foundation of North Central Massachusetts. Each year, Aubuchon hardware store managers nominate a local nonprofit to receive monetary donations through the We Are the Difference initiative. This year, Renee Odette Carpenter, manager at the Middlebury Aubuchon Hardware and Sustainable Agriculture alumna, nominated the Middlebury FFA chapter for this year's gift. Middlebury FFA chapter secretary Kylie Ellis has written thank you notes to Linda Mack, the Vice President of Philanthropy with Audubon Foundation of the Community Foundation of North Central Massachusetts, and Renee Odette Carpenter, the manager of Aubuchon Hardware in Middlebury. And I just wanted to congratulate the FFA for receiving such a wonderful gift. And thanks to Kelly for providing that for us to share at the board meeting.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for letting us know and express our congratulations to the chapter.
Thank you.
Moving on, the consent agenda was part of the approval. Is there any reason that we would need to pull out the minutes? Seeing none, we'll continue on. Nick, can you read the monthly accounts, please?
Sure. Building and equipment reserve, these are all for November. Building and equipment reserve, $810.80. General fund, two series of payments for a total of $126,466.39. Revolving fund for $7,208.49. Makery for $348.60. And two payrolls in the month. The first one for November the 5th of $86,838.39. And the second one for November 18th of $89,458.31. That's it.
Thank you, Nick.
Mainly approved by Suzanne and myself, I think.
Thank you. Policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. Is that you, Austin?
Yes, it is. So this is a quarterly policy we looked at a few months ago, and I'll just read it as follows. So it starts with, the superintendent shall not cause or allow financial planning for any fiscal year or the remaining part of any fiscal year to deviate from the board's approved budget, risk financial jeopardy, or fail to be derived from a multi-year plan. And furthermore, there will be no financial plans that, number one, risk incurring those situations or conditions described as unacceptable in the board policy 2.3 financial conditions and activities. In short, there are no violations of this monitoring policy, which we discussed and reviewed in September. Number two, omit credible protection of revenues and expenses, separation of capital and operations items, cash flow, and disclosure of planning assumptions. So there are a few paragraphs here, but I'll read them. So the first one is, revenue and expenses are monitored through the use of internal controls. All state and federal funds are received by the districts, and they're facilitated by direct deposit from the Agency of Education. Assessments and funds received from another school district or agency are received by check. Each deposit is recorded and classified according to the district's chart of accounts. Cash receipts are primarily received either by the district's revolving fund or student activity fund. These receipts are counted by two parties in order to verify the amount. They are then deposited in the appropriate accounts. So in addition to this process that I just described, operating costs and capital expenditures are separated in two different ways. First, by the account classification, utilizing the framework of the codification system outlined in the federal handbook IIR, as well as the annual budget approved by the voters and taxpayers. Secondly, capital expenditures are not only tracked by the district's chart of accounts, but they're tracked in separate checking accounts with different banking institutions. Expenses of the district utilize a purchase requisition and purchase order system, and this ensures that all expenditures are pre-approved and that sufficient funding is available prior to the purchase of those goods or services. Moreover, this makes sure that sufficient funds exist within the framework of the budget to cover the cost of the purchases. And finally, on this topic, cash flow is monitored on a routine basis to make certain that sufficient funds are available to meet accounts payable and payroll obligations. In addition, the school's line of credit with the National Bank of Middlebury is used periodically to float operating expenses when cash reserves are depleted. Number three, which is the final area here, provide less for board prerogatives during the year than is set forth in the governance investment policy. And in short, the current fiscal year budget provides the same or additional funding for board prerogatives as established in the governance investment policy title number 4.8. No additional programs or major expenditures have been added to the current year budget that have not already been approved. And that's policy 2.4.
Thank you, Austin. Are there any questions for him on 2.4? I don't see any hands raised. So may I have a motion to approve policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting?
So moved, Kim.
Second, Nick.
Well, Missy moved and Kim will second. Is there any further discussion on 2.4? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye or raise your Zoom hand or whatever
Aye.
hand.
All right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Budget, whoops.
The CIA makes mistakes.
Budget development overview version 2 is Dana and Austin. I'm presuming that's both of you, or?
Yes, Suzanne, and we regretfully have to say that we're not quite ready to make that presentation this evening. There are several factors figuring into that. We don't have any indications from the state about revenues and changes that would be going into our factoring for tuitions. We expect to receive those within the week. Two, we are a week earlier than we normally have been with respect to being able to do this presentation. And so we were unable to pull all of the materials together, including those that are coming from the state, to be able to do a substantive update. And three, we are working through all of the budget lines, and some of the things are still changing as we speak. So we would prefer to be able to delay that. If the board chooses, we could do a special meeting just on budget sometime before the holidays, because our first meeting in January is January 5th, and that's the meeting at which we would be hopefully adopting a budget, although because it's early, we would have 2 extra weeks to be able to submit that to the state. But it would probably be more beneficial to do an update between now and the holiday break, and then present the final budget on January 5th. But we have no reasonable changes that we can delineate at this point in time. Austin and I were talking about the cost of health insurance, and we do need to do some more reviewing of that before finalizing those numbers. So at this point in time, it would be purely speculative if we tried to present you with a version 2 that was not fully vetted. So we request your indulgence and do apologize for not being able to pull everything together to be able to give you a more substantive update. But we will entertain any questions at this point if you have them.
Or I can poll the board in an email and come up with another date where we can just talk budget.
That would be helpful. That would give us, if we had at least a week, maybe 10 days to be able to do that, it would be much appreciated, and we would be able to give you much more detailed information and not be shooting from the hip.
Board, please look for an email, and we'll try to pull together just a meeting just strictly on the budget. Okay?
Thank you.
Articles for warning review. So I'm not sure if we can discuss the article warnings, but maybe the EI bond proposal article people could talk about.
Yes, I can say a couple of words about those articles. We wanted to make sure that you saw the types of articles that are included, and to give you an idea of what we'll be presenting for the January meeting. And they follow a very familiar format, but we wanted to make sure that you would know. So anything that would be a surplus, and we still don't know that yet. I'll let Austin address that perhaps in terms of when we might. But in terms of allocating funds of the fund balance to either the building equipment and reserve fund, to the health reserve fund, or to future tax abatement would be articles that we would include. We do not have dollar amounts that would go with those. We wouldn't have had those for this evening either. And then there are 2 articles that authorize the board to make expenditures from those 2 funds. One is the BRF and one is the Health Reserve Fund. And then if there is an additional surplus and we would like to return money to the taxpayers for future tax abatement, then that would be similar to Article 6. And then our regular article, Article 7 on this sheet that you have in front of you, would be giving the details of the budget figures that we would plug in, giving you the total budget, percent increase or decrease over the current year budget, the approximate tuition rate, and how that compares to this year's tuition rate. So, and then Article 8 last year, that was by Australian ballot, but I don't think that that is going to be necessary this year. I haven't heard anything to that effect. So we are not expected to be printing additional ballots for electing officers this year. As far as I know, we may be having our regular annual meeting. Yes, Missy.
Forgive me for not knowing. I'm just wondering where the bond vote for the project shows up. Is it in this article or a separate article?
That would be a separate article.
Okay, thank you.
And hopefully we'll have a little bit more information and guidance because we have Mike Davey, who's here this evening to help explain some of the information that just came in today. So at that, I'll turn it over to Mike if he's still here.
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Thank you, Mike.
I sent Dana an email. We received a proposal from a company called Municipal Leasing Consultants They're based out of Grand Isle, Vermont, and they offer both bonds and leases. However, their specialty is leases. In New Hampshire, we typically do 5 to 6 projects of this size with this company every year. And we've done a few in Vermont, but in New Hampshire, for some political reasons, that we almost do all projects of this size with a lease. So they provided a 20-year lease option. And just as a little context, at a subcommittee last week, we talked about should we consider a bond or a lease, and I think the intent was tonight to provide a little more guidance on the differences. So the current lease rates for an $8.1 million issuance are at 2.917%. And the way a lease works is if you did a 20-year lease at this 2.9 rate, you would have level payments of $540,277 per year. And toward the end of the lease, if you ever had a large surplus or unexpected grant receipt, you can pay the lease off at any time in full. So just to be clear, the lease payments at 2.917% would be $540,277.85 a year for 20 years. You are allowed to prepay. So that's one option, and it's sometimes that's preferred because you have a nice level payment for budgeting, and you do have an option to pay off early. I would say the more common route in Vermont tends to be using the Vermont Bond Bank. They are estimating that next year's bond payment will be 2.26%. That's typically an estimate because they usually don't know the actual rates until the bonds are all assembled in April and then sold to the market in the summer. Because of that, it's very common when you use the bond bank that you use a local bank to do what's called a bridge loan. So, for example, if we did an $8 million Vermont bond bank issuance, that money wouldn't be available to you guys till August. So usually there's what's called a bridge loan if you want to start the project in the summer, which we would, for roughly $1 million, and it's just a bridge loan for a few months until the bond bank sells their package on the market. Municipal bonds through Vermont Bond Bank operate very differently. They are a fixed principal loan, so you're paying off with an $8.1 million project every year. You're paying off a principal payment of $405,000, and then the interest, which is paid in two separate issuances during the fiscal year, is recalculated after every principal payment. So it means you have a much higher weighted early year payment, but you do save interest overall because there's a lower rate. So where I was saying that the first year payment with a lease is $540,000, with a bond, the first full year is $482 plus $75. So I got to do that real quick.
577.
Yeah, 577. So you have a higher initial payment, and then it depreciates over time as that amount
557.
is reduced.
Excuse
that?
me, you're right, 557.
550.
Yep. So the Vermont Bond Bank right now is estimating 2.2%, which is 0.7% less than a lease. But again, with a bond, there's no prepayment option, so you'll just have this payment in your budget. And I did send out the schedule with Vermont Bond Bank, and then the leasing company provided multiple options showing you what it would look like with a 15-year option or a 25-year option. Any questions? So it's certainly the bond bank has a lower interest rate right now.
Mike, how long is the bond bank loan?
20 years.
So Mike, we're comparing on a cash basis, 549, 277 to 557.
For the first year. Yes, correct.
And I mean, that interest payment to the Vermont Bond Bank will drop each year.
That's correct.
Whereas the lease payment will stay flat.
Correct.
So probably after a year or two, the bond bank will be a lower payment.
Yes.
We would need to simulate these.
Right.
Compare these two.
Yeah, I think I sent Dana, which I think he can issue if he hasn't. There's a full schedule for both options.
We'll send those along to the board. I haven't had a chance to do that since we talked, Mike. There wasn't enough turnaround time for me to do that with Fidelity.
No, no worries.
But I'll get those documents in a folder to the board.
But even just on an aside, the interest rate is 0.7 of a point lower as they're projecting. So from an interest rate standpoint, the bond is probably the way to go, unless you really like the flexibility of paying it off early, should you have a big surplus 1 year or something.
Are there any other questions?
Dana, are you going to send those numbers to the whole board, or do you want to send them to the finance committee first?
Your choice. I can do either. Mike has given us all of that information. I think that we should have this as a discussion item on the budget and policy committee next meeting, however.
Yeah, I think we should.
But I'll look to the board, to the chair, about her pleasure as to whether I send it out to everybody. This was originally discussed, I think, both at facilities and at community engagement, that the thinking was that all board members should at least have this to be able to digest. So unless I'm mistaken about the intent of those two committees, then I would go ahead and just send those to everyone.
I don't see any issue with sending it to the full board, and I agree with Nick that the budget and policy could look at it further. Were we hoping tonight to make a decision which way we're going?
No, informational only.
Okay.
So as I have on as I put on there, Suzanne, the EEI bond proposal and article, so just direction and language. I think that the conversation is simply about whether we would tend to prefer a bond or a lease. I think Mike has made it pretty clear which is more favorable at this point in time, so we can have that taken care of. And then we would want to look at the language. If there's anything specific in the language that you would like us to undertake, we can get that drafted for our next meeting. So that's just helping us move that article along, which would be a separate article from the normal operating articles.
So am I understanding correctly that between you and the business office, you would like us to give you any language that we want associated with this tonight?
Or anything that you want us to keep in mind as we are doing that. Now, generally speaking, we would be putting in an article the total amount of the article and the approximate payments but I can ask Mike if he would provide us with some sample language from schools that he's worked with, and I can certainly inquire with Vermont Superintendent's Association to get some language that we could then discuss also at the budget and policy meeting.
Yeah, we did a very similar bond vote in Virgins a few years ago, so I'm sure we can get that language over.
Great, thanks.
Board, what is your pleasure? I'll speak at once.
I like what has been planned is to be able to look at it and to be able to discuss it at budget and policy.
And perhaps what we could do at the budget and policy meeting is look at the draft language and then have that ready for January 5th.
Missy, Christina?
It all sounds fine with me.
Steven? Okay.
Sounds good. I can get in touch with Addison Northwest, Dana, for the language that we used, or unless you want to do that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. If you can get it and they can either send it to me, that will save Mike a step as well. So.
Sure. I'm
Thanks so
happy
much.
to do that.
Great.
Okay, so sounds like all the information from Mike will be shared with full board. It will then be discussed at the budget and policy meeting, and the proposal article language is in the works, and that will go through probably the budget and policy and then administration, and we should have that for January. Is that correct?
That's correct, Suzanne.
Okay.
Suzanne,
Nick?
did we sign off on 8.1? I thought I saw in some of the minutes somewhere that there was going to be a discussion. Is that final?
8.1?
8.1 million, Suzanne,
Oh.
the actual amount. Yes, Nick, thank you for reminding us. I do believe that was something that we were going to decide on. Now, that doesn't have to be finalized until we actually do the article, but if the board has a consensus, that would be helpful for us to know, because all of the information that Mike has provided for us is related to an $8.1 million bond.
So I would suggest then that someone from the board make a motion that we go with an $8.1 million proposal, since we don't know if we're going bond or lease at this point in time, and then we'll proceed vote on that. Missy?
I just wanted to confirm, because I'm recalling that the numbers were being updated. Mike, Davey, is that number solid?
Yeah, 8.1 is the right number.
Okay. Thank you. I'll make a motion to go with an $8.1 million construction project proposal.
Second, Lorraine.
Seconded by Lorraine to go with an $8.1 million construction proposal. Project proposal. I knew there was another word in there. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none and seeing no hands, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. So Dana, we'll see those numbers out sometime tonight or first thing in the morning.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
As soon as I have an opportunity to gather those documents that Mike sent, I had a chance to look at them very briefly today, but felt that it was more important for Mike to do the explanation in a succinct manner. There are several documents, as he mentioned. There are 15, 20, and 25-year figures that you can look at and compare.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for all your time and hard work on this.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mike. You too. Have a good evening.
We are now down to the informational agenda. There were a bunch of reports to the board. Does anybody have any questions on any specific reports that were sent out or comments or
I do, Suzanne.
Lorraine?
Yeah, I had the assistant director board report. And maybe it's, I mean, maybe I'm a little thick. I was reading the report and then I also clicked on the letter that was sent about the work keys assessment. So I'm just not sure when I was looking at these testing results. I know it mentioned, it sounds like we want our students to get at least a gold. So I'm not, when I looked at these, I was like, ugh, those results don't look that good if that's the case. So I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding what is it we're actually hoping our students will test at, and should we be alarmed that so few the percentage is so low for platinum and gold? So I just wonder if somebody could give me a little more info on that.
I will let Jay handle that one.
Yes, Lorraine. I mean, there is, I think, a reasonable level for concern, but those scores are pretty typical for scores across our schools as well. If you look at standardized test scores at Virgins, Mount Abe, and Middlebury. But what that means is that we have students who are not testing at what the state considers as proficient for career readiness, which is that gold level or a 5. What I will say is the data I've provided you doesn't tell the whole story, and I apologize for that. A student, if you noticed in the letter, a student may have earned a 3 or a bronze level on one of the tests, a 4 or a silver level on a second test, and then a 5 on a third test.
Yep.
But they would be listed as a bronze.
Okay.
So you know, if you dig into the data a little bit deeper, which I didn't give that to you, you will notice we have a number of students who one test, they can be bumped up a level if they improve one test, because the other 2 tests are already a silver or gold level. So hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better. You know, the thing that was encouraging, if you look at the winter, so the first time we did it, the winter time, and then when we had students take it again in the spring, there was an increase in terms of percentages that were moving up to platinum, gold, and silver levels, you know, at that point. So there was a change from midway through the year to closer to the end of the year for the students who took it last year. So you know, this is the first time that any of these students have taken this test. So sometimes that can be a bit of a barrier, not being familiar with it. And so when they take it a second time, they do better. We plan to review the test results with them before they take it again. And we found that to be helpful last year, so that students, you know, they knew where they scored. We talked about what they can do to do better. Some admitted they didn't even try the first time. And then the second time we saw improvement in scores because they took it seriously the second time. So I don't know, that's kind of a long-winded answer. Did I answer what your confusion was or what your question was?
Yeah. Jay, also you were talking about how we relate to like regular schools across, you know, for testing. Do our students test similarly as far as other career centers students across the state?
Oh, that's a good question. That I don't know. I would have to, I'll have to figure out where we can find Dana. Maybe you can answer that.
I have some of that. It's very preliminary, and there were some well, I don't want to call them inaccuracies, but incompatible reporting of results. We should have a good comparison this year as a result of getting some of the data glitches worked out, because not everybody reported according to the same standard. And so we did get some very preliminary results. We were asked not to share them, but what I can say is that our career center performed in the median 50% overall in terms of generalized student performance. So, you know, right around the middle third. If you did 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, we were smack in the middle. We were a little higher on one of the assessments, but then again, it depended on how it was reported, and a little lower on the other. But once again, it was, and it would only included, it did not include, that was the other thing. It only included the first set of data. It did not include the second set of data. And I know, as Jay said, that our data, our students did improve. They also, as Jay reported, only included those who met all three criteria as being proficient. So you could have been 1 or 2 points off on one of the assessments and not be considered that the gold standard, because the standard is established by the lowest scoring exam. The other thing is that this last year was the first year that we did it. This is the second year. We can also report any of those students that actually met, that are still enrolled with us, actually met the criteria last year, which I don't think are in your report, Jay, but correct me if I'm wrong. Those students,
they're all in there.
so anybody that did not test but scored at the platinum or gold level last year are included in your data here?
Yes. Every student that tested during one of the 3 testing periods over the last year and a half are included in that data in my report.
Okay, so the only ones that would have dropped off would have been the seniors that tested. Well, wait a second, no. Anyway, that was one of the, that was also one of the things that they raised about the AOE data calculation. That the students, that some of the students had improved from session 1 to session 2, but the data weren't captured in the results that they showed to us. So.
And Dan, I think what you're referring to is we had some students who in the first round of testing last winter, they met that 5 or higher. So they didn't retest in the spring because they had already met the standard. And so their scores got reported as, I think even as blanks. And that's what Dana is talking about, is some of the discrepancies that happened in the reporting. And that was just because that's the way our spreadsheet came out and we didn't realize that was happening. So we corrected that. Yeah, we corrected that for the reporting that happened this fall for the October 15th state report that we had to submit. We corrected all of that from last year.
Okay. And just, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
I just wanted to comment, Jay, that the newsletter was awesome. It was so great to see what the students were doing, like, you know, Ulti's, the kids that Ulti was working with, and the stuff going on in the makery, that, you know, not the makery, the diesel program with Gretchen, and just all of it was really fantastic. Thank you for putting that together and highlighting those, you know, activities.
Yeah, thank you. And just thank you to instructors who helped put those together. And you probably noticed in Ulti's, the students actually helped write, you know, that summary for the human services program. So team effort, definitely.
So Lorraine, one more thing that I'll call to your attention about the data. We started out with 20 students, and I'll explain what Jay at least made a reference to. We started out with 20 in the category a year ago in the fall. We went to 25 when they were calculated into the spring, and now we're at 33 students. So there's growth in those total numbers. The percentage drops because we've added all of the new students to the program, and we've tested more in the cohort this year. So those students, as Jay said, may not be familiar with the testing, and they do expect growth over time. So the way that the work keys assessment is supposed to be implemented is that the first time is a baseline, and then they have up to 4 semesters, or actually it could be more if we end up testing any of our pre-tech students, which we are not required to do by our agreement with AOE and for Perkins funding. But they test once to get a baseline, and then they have 4 more semesters in which to demonstrate growth. And what AOE is looking for is for our students to demonstrate growth, and that would require us to look at a more detailed, disaggregated level to see what Jay was talking about. Because if a student had 2 out of 3 that met the gold criteria, and the person improved from a level 3 to a level 4, in the other one. It may not show any difference in terms of meeting proficiency, but it would demonstrate growth for that student. And that's what we're looking for. So.
Thank you very much.
So the one thing, Jay, I was wondering is when you mention this, with any good form of assessing or assessments, you always share beforehand with the students what the testing environment's going to look like and let them understand what the questions might look like. Does the work keys allow for that? Or is that considered taboo and they just go into it cold so that they may not do as well as they could?
No, WorkKey supplies some sample questions that instructors can use. And I went into each one of the classes and talked with the students specifically about what the 3 tests were, what they were testing, the advantages of doing well. And you might have noticed that Brenda put something in the chat there about students being able to qualify. They don't have to take the AccuPlacer if they score 5 or gold level on all 3 assessments. The SCCV will take that as in place of the AccuPlacer. Anyway, so there's a number of benefits to them that you don't get with normal standardized testing. So just trying to help them understand the value of really doing their best on these. Could we do more with that in terms of doing more practice problems and those sorts of things? Yes, probably, because I don't know that we did. It kind of left that up to instructors, and we certainly didn't say that they had to do that. We just made it available. So that could be an area before we retest in the spring, is just to do some of that. So.
Are there any other questions on any of the other board reports?
I have,
Nick?
oh, sorry.
It was a good article in the Addison saying what was going on. I was interested to see that it was mentioning a veterinary science program, dental hygiene, and robotics. I was just wondering, is any of that going to happen in the next year or so? So I don't know if Jay or Dana wants to respond.
I can say a few words. All of those ideas that may have been floated out through the survey are things that we have begun to discuss with various business partners and are partnering with some of them to develop curriculum. What it would require is it probably will not be rolled out within the next 9 months, but it is something that we are working on diligently. I will say, though, that Adult Ed has begun to look at piloting some of that curriculum, and it's already in place with our Ed to Go with dental hygiene training. And the other one that we're working on is advanced manufacturing with our grant from Senator Leahy and our partnership with Collins Aerospace. So some of those things will begin to take shape over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. But with respect to secondary programming, that will probably be a longer lead time for incorporating things. Although we have had some discussions with Porter and our medical professions instructor, Jen Baker. So those things are in the works, but I can't say that any of those would be ready to be adopted and implemented in the fall, but who knows?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tina, I think you had your hand up.
Oh, back to the testing and work keys. I was just wondering, Jay and Dana, do you feel like it's fair to say that the pandemic kind of throws a wrench into the testing in general, and or not? I was just curious.
The only thing that I would say is that there seems to be a generalized, not across the board, but a generalized, not lack, but reduced engagement by some students as a result of some of the habits that they may have accumulated and during the time where they were on their own. Redirecting them would be important. Jay addressed some of those things in terms of talking about the importance for getting certificates and qualifying for particular jobs or number of jobs with a certificate that's the gold or platinum level, because they are recognized by a number of industries. So to what extent has that played a role? I can't say. Maybe losing the opportunity to be regularly coached by instructors about how to examine questions and how to respond. I was observing one class at one point, and the students seemed to generally, it was, I think, a junior class, the students seemed to be generally confused about how to answer, various types of questions that were part of an icebreaker or a bell ringer. But the instructor did a very good job of saying, well, you're going to encounter these in a variety of certification programs, and knowing how to analyze the question, break it down, and then select a reasonable answer is really what's important. And what I gathered from that brief interaction was that some of the students, not all, because there were a couple of students that were right there with the instructor and saying that this is how I would do it, and I think this is what I'm hearing you say. But there were those who didn't necessarily identify with that approach. And that may be COVID related, but I can't say for sure. I'll let Jay chime in.
I think, Christina, the short answer is, it probably has had some impact on some students, and others, were able to do what they needed to do the last year and a half or so, and, learn the things they needed to learn, so they performed well. But I can't imagine that there isn't some impact, that not having the same access to education for all students that, that the pandemic has caused, it's had to have had some kind of negative impact on students.
Are there any other? Lorraine?
Does anyone else have anything? I don't want to hog the conversation. No, okay. No, I just wanted to say about Dana's report. I was really happy, Dana, to hear or to read about the supervision work that you and Jay are doing. Really happy to see that. I know that was, and that's been important to the board to see that happening, and to read that you guys are really, working hard on that is appreciated.
Thanks.
Anything else from the board? And I do agree with you, Lorraine, the updates on the evaluations piece is important to the board. We've been, trying to keep tabs on it, and it's good to see that it is progressing forwards. That has been an area of concern, and I'm glad that it's out there more. Anything else? Okay, other related to board operation. I guess the only thing I have there is that I'll send out an email about trying to schedule a special meeting just to deal with the budget before Christmas. Sorry, folks. Anybody else have anything else that they might like to put in other? No? Okay. Policy 4.1 governing style. Judd, would you like to take that tonight?
I'll give it a try. We had a lot of public comment in the early part of the meeting, which certainly could have made it go a long time over, but we actually ended only about 10 minutes over. So thank you everyone for keeping it concise. Thank you for those well thought out and passionate comments in the beginning. And then thank you everybody for keeping everything else concise so that we can keep some sort of a schedule.
Thank you, Judd.
Wait, are we 5 early here?
Yeah, we're actually early, 5 minutes, 10
Just
minutes.
FYI.
Yeah, actually, yep, thank you.
5 minutes.
Uh-oh.
It's okay, Judd. It's been a long day for all of us. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of negotiations personnel per 1 VSA 313A, 1B negotiations, and 1 VSA 313A3 personnel.
I'll move that.
Second.
I'd say Judd got it, Judd took it, and Kim seconded it. Patrice, are you the one that's in charge of?
Put you in breakout room.
Yeah, so for just a couple of seconds, Patrice, I know this is going to make things really difficult, but maybe not. Could you move Joe, Dana, and I into the room that you're going to move the board in for about 3 minutes, and then move the rest of the board into our meeting?
Sure.
Thank you. Oh, can we vote on that motion, please, before we disappear?
So moved.
Anybody want to say no? Anybody want to abstain? Okay. Now you can move the three of us, Patrice. Thank you.
Hey, Lorraine, while we're here,
Yes.
can I do a question?
Yeah.
So the making of the video, I'm just wondering about, I probably saw my email that Ken's not available.
Yes.
Are we going to replace him with somebody? And, or I had a thought about, could he go to Ken? Because Ken basically said they're just having so many staffing issues, he just can't get there.
Okay. He was one of the public, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, we know that Mark has agreed to do it from the public. And who else were we? Suzanne, I think, was asking somebody from the public, right?
Look at the list. There.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it in front of me here, but
Hang on, it's
actually, I should have it in the minutes. Hold on, I've got my minutes here, so I should have it there. Yeah, I'm not sure if we'll have to. I mean, it sounded like he would have been a good one to ask, but I'm not sure it's essential to have him. Where are my minutes? Oh, okay. Ken Sullivan. Jason LaRock. Dana was going to ask Jason.
Dana said that Jason can do it.
Okay, so we have Jason, we have Mark. Suzanne was going to ask Nikki Ulette Foster. So, you know, if we have those three, we probably will be okay without him.
That sounds good. I just wanted to make sure because I know time is of the essence.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, unless there's someone else that we can think of, and maybe anyone else who's on here can think of, a community member that I think we were thinking about Ken because he's a supporter of the Career Center. He also is familiar with the work that got done at Virgins that Mike Davey was referring to earlier, that Virgins bond. So I don't know, anyone else similar to Ken that could fill that role?
That's a good question.
Jeff
Glassberg actually might be willing to do it.
Do we have a contact for Habitat for Humanity? Whoever has led the group of students to build the houses, right? That's a thing.
That we've done through the Career Center, or?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. We've had where students are helping with that.
Yeah, not in my time, but my time at the Career Center has been short, so.
Yeah, I don't remember that either in my time, so.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm trying to think of.
National Bank in Middlebury.
Lorraine, what about the people that we're building the tiny house for?
Oh, that's,
You know?
Yeah, we could do, I mean, they're not from this
Yeah,
area. They live in
yeah.
New York City. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, they certainly would speak highly of the Career Center and their experience with, getting a tiny house built. So yeah,
right.
that could be a good possibility.
I'm sure there must be a lot of people.
What about some of the businesses that are donating materials for some of these, the sheds and things like that?
Right. Yeah, or I was even wondering about, we have a lot of students that go to County Tire.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Steve.
Steve Dubois would probably.
Yeah, I mean, he might be a good one for us to reach out to. 'Cause I'm
Somebody
just
at
trying to think of,
G-Stones, G-Stone Motors, that, and again, Kelly's gonna know more about who, does those internships or whoever's in charge of that right now, because that's a group.
10 years ago, students helped build Habitat House
Yeah,
on
okay.
North Pleasant Street. Okay, I wasn't on the board 10 years ago, so thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm old, I guess.
Old, or you've been on the board a long time?
Maybe both.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're young, but you've been on the board a long time. I thought there was supposed to be 3 minutes. Aren't we supposed to be switched over now?
Yeah.
Did anybody have any questions about the community engagement or facilities reports? Nobody said anything, so just want to make sure.
Christina, do you have anybody available for representation from your district?
Been trying, no response.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll keep my ears open. If there is somebody, send them your way.
yeah, it's been, we've done multiple things so far, but to no avail, but we'll keep trying.
Board members?
Was that Patrice?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was waiting for her to text me, but she has not, so I guess I will move over. If that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, Linda. I figured they were still recording, but I wasn't sure.
I don't think we talked about anything too secretive.
Right, right.
All right, I'll reach out to Steve, and if anybody thinks of anyone else community-wise, let us know, and because we're hoping to do those next Thursday.
I will not include that conversations after the executive session.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Linda.
Just let you know.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Linda.
Did we get everyone back? I know Missy's battery died. Yep, all the board members are back. So I thank you all for that discussion. And may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second, Nick.
Was that Kim and Nick?
Yes.
Kim and Nick.
Okay.
So it's moved and seconded to adjourn at 8:08. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we won't even vote on it. It's been a long night.
We
So-
have to vote on it.
All right. Lorraine, are you
We can all
voting?
wave goodbye.
Yes.
Some of us may
Yeah.
not want to adjourn. We might want to stay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Lorraine, you may stay.
can stay,
I'm gonna go, okay?
I was in the Mount Aid meeting till 11 o'clock last night. I'm ready to go.
Oh my God, that's too long. Okay,
night.
have a good
night.
evening.
All
Bye-bye.
right, good night.
Good night,
And Miss-
everyone.
Hey,
Thank you.
all right.
I'll end the meeting. Take care.